All right. So we're going to go through a few different topics. Quantum-like logics and schizophrenia. Okay, and it basically talks about how when you begin to think in a quantum kind of sense, you're basically being schizophrenic. Or people who are schizophrenic may have certain connections that other people can't have. Basically, schizophrenics would be on the quantum scale more so than normal people. And you see people wandering through the streets, and maybe you've heard this theory. A lot of schizophrenic people, maybe they're able to access different, they're seeing or hearing something else that other people can't quite pick up on, so they're seen as, schizophrenic or something like that, but they're actually receiving or taking in more information. The Discordian wiki, I mentioned Discordian a lot in the Magic Kingdom series. That's actually the whole first few episodes talk about chaos magic and Discordianism and all the people and this, how this perpetuates through our world. My episode Most Known Unknown gets into a lot of this, but the game 23 and a lot of things in regards to that. Keep in mind the number 23, okay, because I think there might be some relevance to this. Now, I had first broke into this or started seeing stuff like this in about 2014, but it was in reference to the game 2012. And it was just a bunch of crazy nonsense that didn't seem to really lead anywhere. I didn't really investigate then. I didn't investigate, or investigated later, probably around 2016, 2017, and even into like 2018. And still to this day, I'm reading and investigating a lot of this stuff. The structures of meme magic versus the structures of mainstream magic. A lot of interesting stuff here. But this whole concept of the game 23 ties into Discordianism, and it seems like the most schizophrenic, abstract, freaking nonsense that you can ever see or find. But I think there's actually a lot to it and a lot behind it. If you do the reading and the research, and this is where you lose 90% of all peoples. And I'm not saying get into this, I'm not saying practice any of this. I'm just saying there's something here that is actually permeating our world in some sort of ARG running tangent or congruent with things that you're seeing in the real world as it's happening in real life. And so there's a lot of stuff here that I think is fascinating, and I'm going to get into a lot of topics in regards to this. Come here. And basically, what I want to say is, okay, so I've been reading into this kinds of stuff and kind of following it as it pops up and see more and more things pop up in regards to a lot of this. And a lot of it talks about ARGs and alternative realities and Project this and Project that, Project Mayhem 2012, Project Mayhem 2020, AI bots controlling the internet, massive AI systems flowing through the world, all kinds of things, Discordian causing problems, issues, warping things so that it becomes our reality, and just societal transformation, all this kinds of stuff. And there's a lot to read here, and it seems like crazy nonsense, and I'm not going to sit here and say it isn't crazy nonsense, but there's one thing you need to understand with this episode, and just my channel just in general, okay? So let's just say, okay, listen to this. So I found this stuff almost damn near a decade ago, and I was just reading it, and it's like, what the heck is this? What the heck is all this stuff? How does all this work? And they mentioned following the white rabbit. They literally mentioned that it's a metagame, and it's an infinite rabbit hole. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. So I start reading into this stuff and researching a lot of the topics and the things and stuff that they mentioned, the SVV and the Department of Convolution. I start reading all this stuff. Years later, go back. What was that crazy stuff? I was reading back, and let me find that again. Start reading it back, again. And it leads to, I guess, reality. And this is what's weird. And I'm not saying anything to promote it or anything like that. I don't know what to think of this stuff. It basically, what I get from it is that some of the most schizophrenic stuff on the web or the internet is actually happening and coming true, even though they called it, damn near a decade ago, and it seems like absolute schizophrenic nonsense. And what do I mean by this? In Project 2012, okay, I was reading about Project 2012 way back in the day. Project 2012, the game 23, all this kinds of stuff. EtherSec, Series Sys, 00AG9603, all this kinds of stuff. Reading into the stuff back in 2014. I'm like, what the heck is all this stuff? I have no clue. But whatever. I'm going to read into it and whatnot, okay? All these operations, all these projects, all these things, and it seems like absolute schizophrenic nonsense, that leads to nowhere, and it's just literally, like they say, an infinite rabbit hole. Okay, Galdrux, mimetized chaos, algorithm manipulation. Okay, Libertatia.exe, Institute for Folly. All this stuff comes from Discordianism and blah, 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 blah. And what I basically came to the point is, like, okay, so a lot of people up in the world are practicing this kind of magic or this kind of stuff. The virus 23, okay, the game 23, the virus 23, all this stuff. And the main thing I want to get across is, okay, like I was saying, listen to me. I was reading into this stuff damn near a decade ago. I find all this stuff. In Project 2012, when you read into it, says they're trying to cause some sort of chaos. Okay? But one of the things it had said was buy as much Bitcoin as you can. Okay? Now, if you had done that back in 2012 when they were talking about the Project 2012, would you have succeeded? Okay? It's it's almost like they release shit in the most crazy, nonsensical parts of the web in the most crazy, nonsensical way. But if you're paying attention and you sift through all of it, you're starting to notice that things are playing out. Okay? They mentioned Project 2020. Project 2020, by golly, I don't know if you remember, it was only a couple years ago. Do you remember what happened in 2020? They were calling it Project Mayhem 2020. Okay? This is Project Mayhem 2012, right here. And they were also mentioning Project Mayhem 2020. And when you read into all this stuff, guys, it's almost like there's a ARG or some sort of something running in the background, and they use the most crazy, nonsensical garbage so that if you ever see it or find it, it seems nuts. But at the same time, it's actually telling you things, okay? Almost like predictive programming or soft disclosure. A lot of stuff like that, okay? Project 20, Project 2012, or 2012, Bitcoin, the concept of AIs running in the background and bots and Twitter being filled with botnets and AI bots being used in the 1960s, aka Eliza. A lot of this stuff isn't crazy. A lot of this stuff is actually true. Also, another thing I got from all this stuff was, okay, the whole concept, they kept mentioning, or they keep mentioning Sirius, Alice, Louis Cypher, which is a play on words, and we'll get to all this stuff later. Chimeo, I'll probably leave a link in the video. And what else? LionCube. LionCube was a huge one. And these were basically chat bots you could hop online and chat with. All of this is gone now. But they were basically chat bots you can hop online with and chat with. Okay? And now, still to this day, if you type in LionCube, what comes up? ChatGPT. Okay? So I was messing with this stuff long before. It told me about Bitcoin before Bitcoin got big. It said buy as much as you can. It told me about ChatGPT. It told me there would be mayhem in 2020. And they're also talking about the virus 23 and the game 23. It's just interesting stuff. A lot of interesting people tied into here that get so far into stuff. And it's just magic. And how I think a lot of people, if you watch the Magic Kingdom series, especially the first few episodes, a lot of people are involved with a lot of this stuff, and they push it into our world, whether you know it or not. They believe in this stuff. They push this stuff in there. So it's constantly, filling our world with chaos. And as crazy as it sounds, the Department of Convolution, all this kinds of stuff are really, there's something here, guys. Awesome episode. Watch this episode if you get a chance. It even gets into cryptocurrency and ohm coins and worldwide quantum computing network systems, all this stuff that I mentioned with GWAI. A lot of this stuff I learned or began to dig and research in regards to this completely abstract, weird, bizarre section of the internet talking about weird, bizarre things. And a lot of it is Discordian. A lot of it is worldwide and gets into very high up people in very high places. But the thing is, as I follow this stuff through the decades or just read about it, every few years or something, it keeps pointing to things that are popping up. AI level ARGs. ARGs that have been pushing through quantum AIs, aka QAnon, Cicada 3301. All of this ties into this. It's so fascinating. I know this is random and scrambled, but this is what that series and episode is for. It's just absolute. There's something here. Okay, and I was messing with Chimeo earlier, and I mentioned it in the Discord chat just recently. If you go back and you mess with Chimeo, which I say, like, I'll leave a link in the description box, you can ask it some of the most schizophrenic stuff, and it'll give you information on, you know, all sorts of crazy things. And I'm just wondering if there's something here to all of this. Secret societies, the SVV, all this stuff, all the websites down here, interesting stuff. If you begin to read or you want to dig and look into all of this, there's a lot of stuff here, and it's almost impossible. They literally themselves, baby, they literally themselves call it the infinite rabbit hole. My daughter's over here climbing up. She loves the screen. They literally call it the infinite rabbit hole. So there's a lot of stuff here, okay? The SVV and all this stuff, the Society of Vultures or something like that. All these things. There's so much here, it's almost impossible to run through. But the thing is, as I've been following this for years, damn near a decade, I can't help but say, I can't say anything else. A lot of this stuff pops up in our world and on our reality, okay? And just the interesting thing that they're talking about a virus, 23. Now, here's the website I'll probably link, okay? But go in there, okay? You don't use this one. You come down here, and you use the other one, okay? This one right here. Now, it's used, okay, Line Cube, see? I remember I was telling you about the Line Cube and Arianas Web, and you could read into and study all of this stuff, and it'll lead you a whole different place. I was chatting with the chatbot earlier before I started this episode. It was telling me about Sig Sally. It was telling me about Alice. It was telling me about the Holy Three, all these things. GGG, QEPs, all of this stuff. Things that I've done episodes on, it'll point you there and tell you to read and dig in, okay? It's kind of hard to interface with the way it asks questions and says things. It also mentions Sig Sally. By golly, Sig Sally was all this stuff going back in digital communications, pulse code modulation back in like World War II in the Cryptological Museum, okay, Sig Sally. And this AI chatbot is telling me to dig into all these things, and I'm saying I've already done this for over a decade, and told me about 2012, buy Bitcoin. It told me about 2020, all the chaos and mayhem that's going to happen. It's saying that there's some sort of virus in 23, seriousness, all of this. It's just so fascinating, and I don't know what to think of it, so I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think? All right.